Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of our Town Administrator Update, where we invite Town Administrator Paul Sagarino in just to kind of talk about what's been going on, what might be coming down the pipeline. So once again, Paul, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rich.
Appreciate being here. So the first thing I just wanted to talk about, this Monday, we had both the Board of Selectmen meeting and then town meeting, and at the Board of Selectmen meeting, it was voted on and approved for a reinstatement of the full watering ban starting at the end of the month. Just talk about, the reason why that's necessary right now.
Sure. As everybody knows, the town voted to join the MWRA a year or so ago, but we're still not hooked into the MWRA yet, so it's a long process. So
yeah, a lot of permitting.
Our issues with water continue, and what happens during the summer is we utilize our mill pond treatment plant a lot more than we typically do in order to keep up with the typical water demands of irrigation systems and swimming pools that we have during the summer. And the unfortunate thing is the more that we use that plant, the quicker it needs to be cleaned. The more it needs to be cleaned, the less water it makes. So it's a little bit of a vicious circle there on how things work at the plant. So what happens at this time of year is we really need to shut down the plant for a thorough cleaning. In order to do so, that requires us to access emergency water supply hookup with the town of Lexington. In order to do that, the Massachusetts DEP requires that we have a full water ban. So that's a requirement in order for us to take the water from Lexington that will allow us to maintain the mill pond plant and keep the supply going. So,
right. So it's like a prerequisite from the state that you have to do it.
Absolutely.
And any sense of how long it might take?
Well, the plant will be taken care of relatively quickly once we're able to shut it down. And again, we're heading into the time of the year when most residents typically voluntarily stop watering their lawns. So as you know, the irrigation systems is a big problem for us in our demand and use during the summer. So,
right. Yeah. So hopefully most people won't be really needing to water their lawns come October.
And perhaps we'll get a little bit of luck with some rain to keep the lawns green as well. So.
Right. And just so people are aware, the full watering ban does include no use of irrigation systems and so it's turn those off completely.
Yeah, outside water use.
Right.
Yep.
Very good. I think town meeting, got done in one night, which is always good.
Yes.
I think as far as things that you guys were for your office more focused on, less the apartment issue with the Nordblom, more I think falls in line with you is the Beeline test pilot program. Mm-hmm. So you want to talk about first, why we're looking at alternatives to the Beeline, and then what was proposed and approved? Mm-hmm.
Well, as everybody knows, we made the difficult decision to discontinue the Beeline as of June 30th, 2020. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, what we've been trying to do is to try to find some way to service those residents within the community that generally absolutely rely on the Beeline for their everyday life. And as we know, the amount of rides taken on the Beeline has declined significantly over the years. I think it was stated the other night that 15 years ago there were 50,000 rides. Well, I can say 15 years ago there was also talk of eliminating the Beeline because folks didn't think it was utilized that much. Now I think we're down to 10,000 rides, significantly less than even that. And, it's gotten to the point where it would be fiscally irresponsible for us to sort of continue the program of the bus running through town. But that said, the 10,000 rides that we are doing are folks that genuinely need the in-town transportation, and we're trying to look at any alternatives we can just to sort of make sure that we're able to provide some level of service to those residents.
And so the pilot program that is going to be conducted over 6 months, probably starting early in the year,
yep.
Is going to be vouchers up to $10 for people per ride to use services such as taxis or rideshare programs like Lyft and Uber. Talk about some of the perceived benefits of those type of services as opposed to a bus transit with a fixed route.
Well, I think the biggest one, obviously, is door-to-door service when you want it. That's probably the biggest thing from a traditional public transportation bus system. On a traditional bus where the route is, you may have to walk couple blocks from your home
Right.
in inclement weather to get to the bus. So I think probably the biggest benefit of that type of transportation is just the door-to-door service that you can get. And again, as you know from using that service, it's on demand 24/7. So what our goal is to come up with a way to verify and document the need of the residents, and then to come up with a way to sort of subsidize whatever method of transportation they choose. If they're comfortable taking taxi cabs, then to have a way that we can subsidize the taxi cab ride. And similarly with the rideshare services, we don't necessarily want to tell people what the best way that they think that they should go is, but we just want to be able to provide a way to assist them with getting that service because it's so needed by them. So
Right. Yeah, you're not necessarily endorsing any service over the other. It's just
correct.
These are out there. That's what's available for use.
Exactly, and to sort of come up with a way that we would subsidize a cab ride, or subsidize a Lyft ride, or subsidize an Uber ride, or some other method of transportation.
Right. Now, it's my understanding that part of the purpose of having this test program is to work out some of the kinks that might be in it, as far as, and one of the things would be, who is eligible and how the town determines that. I know you're looking at criteria based on, age, mobility issues,
Yep.
and income driven. And my understanding is that over the course of that 6 months, kind of the qualifications of who can be part of this voucher program that's something that's going to be looked at.
Yeah, I mean, it's a work in process right now. We're going to need to identify those folks that are riding the system right now. We have a pretty good idea of who the regular passengers on the Beeline are, because they typically buy monthly passes. So
Right.
we have a really good sense of who our target market is. So I think, as what you said, is we're going to have to figure out how to administer this system as we go forward that makes the most sense and benefits the most of those residents in some way. And again, it is evolving. We don't really know what's a good income level. We don't know all the specific
Right.
reasons for our riders, but we want to try to meet their needs as best as possible. So it'll be in process for a while until we sort of iron out the kinks.
Yeah.
But it's not a new idea. Some communities are doing it on a small scale and a large scale. So.
And two last points on that. One, as was brought up at town meeting, by a resident who uses the Beeline showed concern about not being comfortable accessing Uber and Lyft.
Mm-hmm.
COA Director Marge McDonald pointed out that they're also looking at other types of programs that are more easily used by seniors or people not familiar with the smartphone technologies. So.
Yeah, it actually has a good name, Go Grandparents. So
Right.
that's for folks that may not necessarily have a smartphone, may not have access to a computer, and what they would be able to do is to call the COA and book a ride through the rideshare. So we develop sort of a system where we work as the middleman between the resident and the whoever's going to give the ride, to sort of coordinate that for those folks, like I say, that may not have a smartphone or may not have access to a computer, and it may be difficult. Technology may be difficult for them. We're trying to find a way to service those residents as well.
And the last thing is, you mentioned, the price of operating the Beeline isn't becoming, feasible based on the ridership. And as DPW Director John Sanchez, who is also working on this program, pointed out that right now, I think the average cost of a ride is $14, and this is $10 with the door-to-door on demand. So it looks like it might be, economically, beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, Marge McDonald and John Sanchez have been working on this issue for a long time now, and I think you probably heard during the presentation, we've looked at everything to come up with a solution that for some way to sort of meet the transportation needs of these residents. And we looked at combining our system with Bedford and Lexington. We actually won a grant for the 3 towns to look at ways that if we combined our systems that we would increase ridership and lower the per ride cost. Our neighboring communities are dealing with the same reduction in ridership that we are. So this
Right.
is not just a problem that's unique to Burlington, it's unique to the whole region. So again, kudos to Marge and John. They put in a ton of work on this to even get to this point where, we looked at a lot of options and found out that they weren't financially feasible, because they may have been 3 times as expensive as the Beeline. So
Right.
there's a lot of great ideas out there, and they went through a ton of them to get to where we are today.
So yes, a lot of thought has been put into it. I want to briefly touch on something that was brought up at a selectmen's meeting earlier in September, and that was just kind of keeping an update or getting updates on some of the liquor licenses from businesses that have closed. You know, Uno's and Besitos were discussed. Both actually are in the works for, you know, being transferred. Just talk about, in general, the importance for the town of kind of keeping track of where those go, so that you know it's not too long of a time between one restaurant closing and that being transferred and worked again into something else.
Well, as you know, a liquor license to us is a valuable financial tool, you know. So any inactive liquor license, theoretically nobody's eating there, theoretically there's no meals tax being paid, so it does have a financial impact on the community. So what the goal of the state licensing process is, you know, we try to be respectful of the fact that many of these businesses purchase these liquor licenses for a large sum of money. So I think it's reasonable to give them a reasonable amount of time in order to try to find a way to dispose of the license. So what we're trying to do with the liquor license is to institute some best practices from the state, and a lot of the state processes really, they want to have public hearings for a lot of this stuff. So previously we may have relied upon, say, a written update from the license holder or their attorney to say, hey, we're trying to find a place to sell this license. What the state really recommends, in order to have a good fact pattern and a good process to lead to, you know, potentially having to take the license away, they want to have that happen through the public hearing process. So, you know, we basically instituted a process now where if there's a license that's inactive, we will, on a regular basis, call them back into the Board of Selectmen for a public hearing to sort of update us as to what their plans are for the license. And again, these all came down from the state as best practices that we should be instituting, just so that we sort of stay on top of what licenses are out there, and, you know, so we can get them back into circulation and generating, you know, revenue for the community as soon as possible.
Right. It's a documentation process. So the last thing I want to talk about is, I'm sure people have seen, because, you know, it was a big celebration in his honor. But, you know, the town did lose a long-term employee and one Chief Yetman of the fire department. So just talk a little bit about, you know, working with the chief, and what's the next step as far as, you know, we have, you know, Mike Patterson is now the interim chief, but you know, there's still a process to finally, you know, select somebody for that position.
Well, you know, what can you say about Chief Yetman? He's just one of those people. He would do anything for you. He'd give you the shirt off his back, and you know, he's become part of my life for the past 14 years. So it's tough when you lose someone like that. But I think everybody looks forward to their future retirement, and you know, I think that he's probably catching on and enjoying it pretty well. You know, a couple weeks into it, it's probably starting to actually settle in that he actually is retired. But he's obviously going to be missed, all his years of experience. But that said, I mean, we've been very fortunate. We have Mike Patterson, who was able to step in as the interim chief, and you know, we also have some other very talented personnel within the fire department that, you know, a lot of them have been pursuing education to, you know, move up in the ranks. So the next step for us is to interview the internal candidates. So we'll be posting that position. It'll be open to members of the department. We'll evaluate everybody we have at that point in time, and then we can make a determination as to whether, you know, the next fire chief will come from that group, or if we wish to sort of seek a larger pool of applicants. Right. So we're ready to get that process started up with the internal process, because, like I say, Chief Patterson's been filling in now since the beginning of August. So we're ready to get that part rolling and take a look at the internal side of things and just keep that moving forward.
Excellent. And it was fitting that the retirement party was at the new fire station too.
It was, and again, I think you know, the other big thing that's going on now is we're on the verge of implementing the paramedic service. So that gets closer and closer every day, and you know, that service, to be able to provide that to the residents, is going to directly impact people's lives. Just having that higher level person be able to show up at your home that quicker if it's an emergency is going to save lives, and you know, we're really anxious to be able to start that.
Very good. Well, I think that's all the questions I had, and we've hit about the 15-minute mark, and I think that's, you know, enough that residents have put up with the two of us talking. So I want to thank you once again for coming in, and we will, you know, see you back here next month.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rich.
All right, thanks.